Welcome to What's on Your Bookshelf, a life and leadership podcast where we live out loud the pages of the books that are on our shelves, with your hosts, Denise Russo and Sam Powell.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of What's on Your Bookshelf. This is our life and leadership podcast where we're living out loud the pages of the books that are on our bookshelves. I'm so glad to be here with you today, Sam, as we go through this new book. This is our book that we're in the middle of right now called The Let Them Theory by Mel Robbins. And we're just getting started in the book, but today we're going to be in chapter 3. And like we said before we started the show today, Sam, this book is surprising me in all the good ways.
It really is. Yeah, it's funny. You and I both had the same sort of feeling of like we were a bit skeptical going into this book. And don't really know why, because not like we both like Mel Robbins. We're not like huge avid followers of hers, but like she's fine. And I think we were both a little bit skeptical on this, but you were saying like you have so much of this chapter highlighted, and I do too. And every single chapter is just like some gold of nuggets of really good wisdom and thoughts and just a lot of things that have pulled from other threads. Like I don't know how many times I've like, oh, this is pulling straight from like the Stoic thoughts that we've seen in other books, from stuff from last year, the year before, all that sort of stuff. So it's this one's I'm really liking, and it'll probably be what I end up recommending to quite a few people. But this chapter is titled, shocker, Life is Stressful. And sure is. And I love, the thing I highlighted right at the beginning was, modern life can feel like death by 1,000 cuts. And if that's not one of the most true statements I've ever heard, I don't know what is, because I feel like that is what life feels like. It's often not some like huge big thing that feels like it's just weighing you down, although sometimes people are like, work's killing me. It's the little things, because when I ask somebody, oh, what's so bad about work, it's, well, there's this meeting and this person and this project and this thing, and it's just like slice, 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 and all of a sudden you feel like you're bleeding.
This book has reminded me about some of our books in the past that talk about how you have to focus on yourself first and not let everything else bother you that is around you. And this whole chapter is about what you just said, that you have all these other things going on, notifications binging and dinging and meetings and people's problems. And that is not on you.
Yeah.
You have to, this book is saying, let that be, and then figure out a way to be okay with all of that, and then be who you're meant to be. And what I highlighted right underneath the part you just mentioned, where she says you can't control how other adults behave, and stressing about it diminishes your power. And I was reading this chapter, Sam, yesterday when I was in the middle of being like a pity party of one. And thinking to myself, like, why is this happening? And why is this person doing this? And why is this other person causing that? And this entire chapter is about your time and energy and how you choose to waste, spend, or invest it, which is something we often talk about in our episodes. And so I love how she used this chapter to give a real life story of something that really irritated her. And I was thinking the whole time she was writing it, that it was like she was talking to me. And I was like, yes, I've been there too. Yes, well, I've been in the grocery store in those lines that you've been in. I know what that feels like.
Yeah. And it's funny, and she uses this story, and I really encourage people to read the book because she just tells it so well. But it's really about just somebody coughing behind her on an airplane, and the thing that really struck me as I'm reading this is that like it's these moments in life where like you're completely justified in being upset by the thing, right? Like what the person is doing around you or by you or to you is wrong. And should they stop doing it? Absolutely, right? Like they absolutely should not be doing the thing that they're doing. But it's what you just said, right? Like you can't control how other people behave, and stressing about it takes away your power. Like you are giving them power out of your own life that should be yours to have and to own. And you're giving it away by worrying about all the stuff you can't control, about how other people's bad behavior, right? And I highlighted the part right after that says you'll never reach the full potential of your life if you continue to allow stupid things or rude people to drain your life force. And like, I mean, I think about that. I dealt with that at work all the time. You deal with that in life all the time, but it's like all these little annoyances. Like I think about going, like you said, like standing in line at the grocery store, just going out and about and interacting with people. And you're like, what is wrong with this person? Like, why
Mhm.
are they doing this? Are they seriously doing this thing right now? And the longer you sit in that space, the longer you're letting someone else's stupidity basically control like the life you're living, the potential that
Yes.
you could reach in this day, in this moment. And so that's like this power of this thought process of like, well, just let them be an idiot. Let them be rude. Let them be whoever they are. What are you going to do about it? Right? Like,
Yeah.
let me, if they're going to stand over there and hack and cough up a lung and do whatever and not cover their mouth, can I move away? Can I cover my
Yeah.
mouth? What do I need to do? What responsibility do I have to keep myself, the people I care about, safe, happy, healthy, whatever? And how do I do that? And I think that's hard in those moments because you feel so justified in your
Yeah.
annoyance, anger, whatever.
I think that the key that I took away from her story, which the gist of it is there was a guy sitting behind her on the airplane coughing uncontrollably and not covering his mouth, and she asked him to stop and he didn't. And so she got really frustrated by that. And I think we maybe all have been in similar situations. And so the
Mhm.
the key that I took from that though was that you don't have to be a pushover and just let them misbehave either, but you
Yeah.
can come up with alternatives to give you peace. Like she was afraid that she was going to get sick because she was about to be presenting a speech somewhere.
Valid,
So
right? Like valid thought process,
valid.
valid concern.
Yeah, so when she decided that she was going to put on her headphones and wrap a scarf around her face, maybe she did it in a little dramatic fashion, even to make
I
herself
would have.
feel better about it, and that's okay too. But she had an alternative, and I had the same thought the other day where I sit for my job that I'm doing during the day is in cubicles, of which I don't do well because I have worked at home for 15 years without distractions and people around me. And not only is where I sit in this like cubicle area, but it's also where the back of my chair is up against a doorway that goes into the kitchen where people
Oh
have
gosh,
their
yeah.
lunch. So every day it is so smelly and loud during lunchtime, and it gets to the point where I can tell that my body is feeling irritated, and I almost get angry about it because people are laughing and eating their lunch and joking and spending
Yeah.
time while I'm working at my
Right.
desk, right? And so I kind of had to chuckle to myself while I was reading this because I've had to do the put the scarf over your face situation where I come to work early on purpose so that I'm here when nobody else is. And I got some really nice, expensive earbuds that I can wear at my desk so I can listen to classical music. And instead of me going home and complaining, which by the way, I have done, to
Mhm.
say, my ears hurt from wearing earbuds all day long, or I'm tired because I had to go to work early just so it would be quiet. The point is that there's always, I think she says it somewhere in here, there's always, it's in this chapter, there's always something you can do. And I can't remember where on the page is. I'll have to keep flipping as we talk through our episode today, but there's always something that you can do about your situation. And so I'll pause because she says, in the book is that when you let the world around you impact your emotional state and peace of mind, you become a prisoner to the external forces. And then, sure enough, what did she do? She quoted Epictetus,
Epictetus, yeah.
remember Epictetus? I can't remember how his name was, but we read about him all
Yep.
last year.
We read this exact
And
quote in The Obstacle is the Way.
yeah, had the exact quote from, and by the way, if you're listening to our episodes and you haven't read The Obstacle is the Way or gone through our entire year of Stoicism, you need to go back and listen to those episodes. They were life changing. I mean, I always say that every book we've read is awesome and it's life changing and good, but the year that we did that and the year that we did the happiness books really, really have helped me to stay conscious. I'm not always good, like I have had these little
Sure.
pity parties, but it helps me stay conscious about
Yeah.
these are things that these people thousands of years ago taught, and we just have to remember it and apply it, which is
Yeah.
why we live out loud and go deep into the books.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And the Epictetus quote is it's not what happens to you, but how you react that matters. And that's really like Stoicism is all about. It's like you have control of yourself. And like this this entire book is really very stoic in its approach of like let other people do whatever they want, right? Like let them do it, because as soon as you don't, you give them, you know, the control over you, and you are the only person. You always have a choice. You always have an option. And as soon as we think we are a victim, like as soon as we sit into the like move ourselves into the victim seat, we are a victim because we choose to be a victim. We are never a victim if we do not choose to be a victim, right? It doesn't matter what happens to us, right? It really is about our reaction, about what we do with that, right? And some of the most inspirational stories are things of that nature, right? People who were in jail, or people who forgave people from horrible crimes. Like it's your power is in the response and is in what you do with it. But like life is stressful. There are a million things, and it's sort of like don't let yourself make it more stressful than it actually is or actually needs to be, right? And she says she talked to you know, a PhD person here who's a specialist on stress themselves, and they gave a lot of information. It was really similar to like what we had learned in our Cleaning Up Your Mental Mess by Dr. Caroline Leaf earlier this year. But just like 7 out of 10 people are currently living in a chronic state of stress. And you and I know, and they talk about how bad that is for you, but like they don't even get into how bad this is for you. Like go back and listen to those first episodes, like this is bad and it's killing you type of a thing, right? Like living in this stress, living in this chronic state is what is killing us a lot of times. And it's nothing huge usually. It's the death by 1,000 cuts. It's all these little annoyances. It's all these things we take into ourselves and our lives that aren't ours to carry. That's what's really stressing us and what's really killing us at the end of the day. It's not necessarily the thing itself. It's your response to the thing that happened.
It's the response. You're absolutely right. She says something in here to the gist of, you can't control what other people think, say, or do, but you can control what you think, say, and do. And isn't that also what we always talk about? That if you look at whatever result you have in your life, and then you back it up a step and look at the actions you took or didn't take to get the result that you got, which maybe that result is that you're frustrated, you're stressed, you're sad, you're mad, whatever. You go back to the actions that you took to get there, and then you go back to that belief system, and then you go back to your thoughts and your thinking. But there's that one piece that comes even before that, which is, I think, what I learned the most from Dr. Leaf's book, which is about all that subconscious stuff that happens even before you have a conscious thought that starts to form in your brain. And so one of the things that I thought was interesting in this part of the chapter, Sam, was when she was describing what this doctor said about where your protection of your brain is. And she was saying, for example, that when you're in a non-stressed state, that this is your prefrontal cortex part of your brain. So if you can just imagine the blob of brain, that this is the part that would be the most front of your brain, and like on the outside and where you would imagine your brain is. But when you are stressed, the part that's activated is inside all of the squishy material of your brain, deep inside of there, in this little almond shaped thing called your amygdala. So you think about how much more pressure your body has, even just to get to the center of your brain, to this little almond shaped thing that's going to then trigger all this other bad stuff in your body. And that's why we get exhausted, we get tired, we get heart disease, we get stroke, we die early age, we get dementia, and all the things that Dr. Leaf scared us about in her book. But I think that her book probably should have been called like Let Me Scare You to Life instead of Scare You to Death.
Yeah. Well, right. And the, and for people who don't understand like the neuroscience part of it, right? Like the prefrontal cortex is what is all of your reasoning, like your high level reasoning, the part of you that makes you the most human, really, at the end of the day, right? Being able to think through things, organize your thoughts, all of this sort of stuff. It's the stuff that in like when ADHD is triggered, it gets all messed up because it's like it gets a little bit disorganized. So you have a hard time like following a process or, doing things like that, right? But it's the part of your brain that like really lets you like logically think through stuff and use all your reasoning, all of like the thoughts that we really like aim to be at in an organized space. And the amygdala, this part that's in the center, is like your primitive monkey brain. Like it's the part that is like, let's turn on our default settings and just do the things we need to do. And so every time you get stressed, your prefrontal cortex like shuts down and moves everything back to like, all right, we're moving on default mode, right? We are working in this part of you that is just going to react to everything. That's just how we're designed. And it is to keep us safe. And I don't know how many times I'll like die on this hill of like everything you are ever doing is to keep you safe and alive. Like that's just it. We are wired this way. And so any stress response, all of these things that are happening are just moving you into the space. It's like, all right, we're triggered. There is not safety here for whatever reason that we've decided. And so now we are just going to use all of our default responses.
Yes.
And like the first book we read, the Cleaning Up Your Mental Mess, is how do you really work on adjusting those and changing those and changing those thought patterns. But the point is life is stressful. And if you let yourself be triggered over and over again and keep pushing yourself back into this like primitive default brain, you are never going to be using the full potential of just your brain itself, of how you think, how you show up, how you do things. And this is why it's just so important to, really create that space, get really conscious on what is happening, what things trigger you, this is the work that I do with like young athletes and their adults, helping their adults understand what's going on with the kid. What are the things that trigger them? What are the things that throw them into stress, that throw them into friction, so that they know how to show up and how to help them and not make it worse, but actually help them learn to develop the skills that a lot of us as adults never learned how to do, work through it in therapy or something. Like this is that creating space. She says, the moment anything happens that stresses you out, say, let them. Put yourself in pause, then say, let me, and take a breath. And all that really is giving you distance and creating space from the trigger and your response. Like this is emotional intelligence. This is emotional control. Is something happens and you don't immediately react. You put enough space in between by saying, let them, and then saying, let me, and then taking ownership of your response itself. So not letting it go into that amygdala default, what is my fight, flight, fawn, freeze response, and moving it into, okay, like let's keep this in my prefrontal cortex and let's think through this and really, take the response that I want to have, the control that I want to have on my life.
She describes even that not all stress is bad stress. And so the idea is that you can move between this part of your brain and that part of your brain. And it's intended to do that, but it's always meant so that you go back quickly to this set point. And it's sort of like reminded me, have you ever had like a t-shirt or I don't know, underwear or socks where eventually the elastic runs out? It is meant to last only so long. And if you stretch it and stretch it and stretch it and stretch it and stretch it, eventually it's going to wear out. And so your amygdala isn't intended for you to live in those fight, flight, fawn, freeze areas permanently. It's meant for you to go there, protect yourself, and come back out again. And so she says, frankly, stress is a major problem. It's time you deal with it. Well, isn't that easier said than done? But here's the point. Read the book, listen to our episodes with us, come along on the journey, because she does talk about the body and the brain and how you do it. You had just mentioned this part about breathing. Sam, I must have highlighted the whole section in the book about just simply something as easy as what we don't do, which is just take a breath. And isn't it funny when you think about even if you said something bad happened and so I just had to sigh, like you just like, isn't that even our body protecting you? Because this is specifically saying if you take a deep breath, it's scientifically proven to help you lower your stress response. So even your unconscious mind knows how to protect itself, but we continue to put barriers in front of ourselves by allowing other people to control the way we think, act, and do based on what they're thinking, acting, and doing that we don't have control over.
Yeah, exactly. And like you see it all the time in people, right? Like, again, I spend just a lot of time observing sports, observing people's reactions in moments. I don't know how many times I've watched some kid mess up on the ball field, on the court, on the football field, whatever. And you can tell you figure out who their parent is right away, because their dad's over there like losing his mind about something, and you're like, bro, like let's calm it down. But it's like, that's a person who hasn't developed this skill. This is a
Yes.
skill that you can do, right? The like, let me deep breathe this instead of like, banging my fist and going, come on, what are we doing? And it's like, what are we teaching our kids, right? What are we doing? But that's just that lack of skill built up, and it's just a skill, right? And odds are that's probably exactly how their parents dealt with stuff or
Yes.
whatever, right? Like we just pass this stuff along over and over again unless we work on it in ourselves. But like it's just creating that space, creating that moment where you can go, right? The sigh, the letting it breathe for a second
Yeah.
before you outwardly respond in some way. And it's hard. It is hard to do, especially when you come across something that triggers you deeply, right? When it hits one of like your deep wounds, things, whatever. Like those are really hard. I know. I've been there. We have literally all been there. And so it's just figuring out what those things are, understanding it and figuring out what works for you. Some people it is the sigh. Some people it is the deep breath. Some people it is like a physical, like let me, squeeze my hands, bang my chest. Like it is something that's just like I need to be grounded for 1 second
Yeah.
or a half a second so that then I can respond to, to what it is, right? It's what I teach my son. It's like, hey, don't throw your glove when you come in to the dugout and you're mad about something. Let's take a deep breath and place the glove down, right? That's all I'm asking is like a little bit of space between what your body's telling you to do as that stress response and what you have all this actual control over, because these are life skills that you need. These are the things you need to be able to do as an adult when your boss pisses you off in a meeting and you can't throw your laptop at them as much as you might want to.
John Maxwell has a book that you and I have both read and teach from called Sometimes You Win, Sometimes You Learn. And it should probably be like sometimes you win, but you always learn. Because in this case that you're talking about on the sports field, I could instantly see this movie playing out in my mind of like the dad getting mad, like you said, or being upset that the kid missed a catch, and the mom being like, "It's okay, honey, good job." Even like for the player that's not at all doing a good job. And you have to have maybe the yin and the yang in your own self to give yourself a little bit of grace, because at the end of the day, if you can separate yourself from those triggers, like the kid who maybe missed a catch or got a strikeout or whatever, is that the Dr. Aditi, her research that Mel talks about says that learning to protect your energy, which is again, you can't control what somebody else thinks, says, or does. You can control what you think, say, and do. And protecting that improves your mood, your mindset, your health, your focus, and your ability to disconnect and unplug. And Mel said that there were just dozens and dozens and hundreds maybe of people that ended up getting a tattoo that says "let them," and there's pictures of it in the book. But isn't it funny, Sam? None of the tattoos were a picture, or none of the pictures were tattoos that said "let me." And what I want to get from this chapter and what we're going to read next, when we focus on the "let them," is getting to the point of, once you can let somebody be who they are and think, say, and do, how do you let yourself be okay with that? So the "let me" part, I think for me, is the part that I want to understand best. This book was promoted as "Let Them." It's called "Let Them." Everybody knows it's about letting people just be who they are, but part of the people is ourselves as well.
Yeah, yeah, and that's I think the part of this that like I really don't think that the marketing did justice with, and I get the let them because that's the appealing part, right? That's the
Yeah.
appealing of like let them do whatever, right? Like just let them, and I'm gonna be over here doing my thing. But that let me is, and she says it like it's the other side of this coin. You can't have one without the other here to really make this theory work, and it's the work that's so important because it's your power and it's your peace. And she says your peace is worth protecting. And my grandmother has always said my whole life, I can always remember her saying that like you've got to protect your peace. And like
Mhm.
that's such an important, like if I ever got something tattooed on me, that might be one of the sayings I would think of. But it's that, what do I own to protect my peace? It's an active thing, right? This let them, let me is very active. It is not passive, like you said earlier. It is not like letting somebody have bad behavior. It's what do I have control over? Where do I show up in this process? Right? I'm not going to let you walk all over me. I'm going to let you do your thing, but I'm going to let me make a choice on how I respond and what I do. And that is where all of your power sits. And all of that power is what protects your peace. And it is worth protecting. You should be able to lay your head down at night and feel a sense of peace. That is a standard you should be aiming for, and it's worth it. You are worth it.
You're worth it. And I think that we've spent a lot of time on this episode and so far in the first couple chapters focusing on self-development. All of our books are about self-development, but all of our books are also about professional development, leadership development, and how you can be better in work and life. That's why we call it a life and leadership podcast. So I love, Sam, that she ended this chapter by saying that, yeah, I told the story about the guy coughing on the plane and how annoying that was. And she says at the very end of this chapter, what about when it's not clear what you should do or what the right response is? And how do you use this theory when your stress is coming from something much bigger, like your job? And so I want to definitely make a point on that we know if you're listening in this podcast, that it's a good chance that you have a job and it is work. And a lot of times stress comes from work. And the next chapter next week, when we come back together, is entitled Let Them Stress You Out. And it's a little triggering to even just read that title of the chapter until you get to the meat of the content of the chapter, because work is the number one cause of life stress for most people. So I even though we tell a lot of stories about our kids or our personal stories, I want to make sure that we let the listeners know as well that this is all to say that what happens in your home or in your business or at your job are all interrelated to your holistic well-being.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. The stress of your life carries into work. The stress of your work carries into life, right? Or if you're in school, it's the same thing, right? Like with kids, we see that. I see the stress of my daughter's day at 1.5 carrying home and the same things, like there is no part of you that's like, oh, now I just shut this off. I wrap it up, take my shoe. He was like Mr. Rogers. We put our sweater on and now all that stress of the outside world is gone. Like that's not how it works. And you're right. Like I read the title of chapter 4 of the let them stress you out. And I was like, oh, I don't know about that. Let's see. But I feel like, again, I read every one of this book and every one of these chapters and I start skeptical and I don't know why I'm starting so skeptical, but like by the end of it, I'm like converted and, praising all the highlights that I've got in the book. So this is one absolutely worth picking up. It's easy to read. It's, she's good writer and it's engaging. Stories are good. They flow through with with the little nuggets of wisdom so very well. And it's the next week's conversation will be interesting and to probably definitely be a lot more work focused of what do you do when the thing stressing you out is a chronic thing, right? It's like something you can't really escape or you feel like you can't escape, and what does that look like? And you and I've coached enough people in that space to have lots of thoughts and stories in that area.
Oh, yes. This next chapter, I think, if you come back and listen, and I hope that you will, friends, it is an empowering chapter. So don't get caught up by the title, because what's in under the cover and in the pages is very empowering if you're willing to do the hard things. And sometimes the hard thing is making a decision to walk away from the thing that's causing you the stress. So I'm looking forward, as always, every week that I do in being able to talk with you, Sam. I'm so glad that we're living this out loud together. And I am also becoming a converted fan. Every chapter so far, and we're only into 3, has made me think, man, I should have started reading this as soon as it came out. Something made me not do it. And I'm so glad that we added this to our list. And I'm looking forward to being with you again next time.
Me too. Looking forward to it.
All right. Well, as far as that goes as for today, my name is Denise Russo. On behalf of my friend Sam Powell, this has been another episode of What's on Your Bookshelf. And before we close, I should have added this before we closed. Sam has links to how you can get a copy of the book for yourself, because it's always better to read this if you have a copy of the book and read it for your own life and leadership. And right now the book is on sale. So there's a link for you to be able to get the book if you would like to do that as well. So that's it. So goodbye for today, and we'll see you again next week on another episode of What's on Your Bookshelf.